Hello everyone, welcome to a new chess video. Welcome to the Belgrade Gambit. A gambit that's gonna blow your mind. It's a gambit we've never brought to the channel, okay? And you're gonna love it, I'm absolutely sure. Pay attention to this. When can we play the Belgrade Gambit? Well, whenever they play the double king's pawn. Why? Because now we'll play knight f3. They'll respond with knight to knight c6. Notice that this is the most common thing in chess. I'm sure all of you have played this position thousands of times. And then the Belgrade Gambit comes after the wonderful move knight c3. If I ask you what move this is, what opening this is, almost all of y'all will be able to tell me it's the four knights opening. Why? Because it's usually met with knight to knight f6. And we're in the four knights opening. So pay attention. This opening, I don't know if you remember, but I made a video where we saw it was the most successful opening of all 2024. There was no other opening with a higher success rate. However, we're going to tweak it a bit and introduce the Belgrade Gambit, which is about, after the four knights opening, playing this wonderful d4, which I honestly thought wasn't so powerful until I studied it thoroughly, and I was left perplexed seeing the results. I know with all my heart that, excuse me, that you're going to love it, because I know you. It's going to allow you to win quickly, safely. It's easy to memorize, so this video meets all the requirements to be a total success. Pay attention to this Belgrade Gambit. What's the most common response here? Well, without a doubt, pay attention to this. It's capturing this pawn. Why? Because if they don't capture this pawn, the threats are multiple. Now we're threatening to capture this pawn here. Notice that we have it defended by the knight, so they couldn't recapture it. And besides, defending it wouldn't be the best option either, because they'd let us gain a lot of initiative. Notice that if they come here, we could keep attacking. They'd have to come here, we could even exchange the double pawns. It's obvious that here the best move this knight is here, after the Belgrade Gambit, is to capture this pawn. Why do I love, and I'm telling you the truth, I love this gambit? Because the moves for the black pieces are practically forced. If they play something different, like for example here, other than taking, we're better off. That's why it limits our study and benefits us greatly to learn the lines. Why? Because they have to capture no matter what. Okay? And then how are we going to continue? Let's see, chess teacher. I imagine if we play a gambit, you already know what a gambit is. We're not going to recapture here, because a gambit is giving a pawn to the opponent in exchange for having much more attack and much more initiative. Well, obviously taking here would seem like a Sicilian type line, but without the pawn here, like a Scotch. We don't want that, okay? We want to move this knight to this square right here. What do you think? It already sounds aggressive, doesn't it? Then here, several questions already arise, right? What would black do? Well then, let's analyze it without any problem at all. Surely you're all thinking of two moves, and one already seems better than the other, right? For example, capturing this knight seems like the bad option. Why does it seem like the bad option? Because after the recapture, notice that this knight would have to move and would be left in a very passive position. After the recapture of queen takes d4, notice that our position's a real bargain. Both bishops can come out beautifully, while the opponents can't come out. Not just one, but neither of the two. This queen is in the center of the board, very active, and can't be easily driven away. Besides, our knight on f3 is infinitely better than the one on e7. And if that weren't enough, notice that we can castle on the next move once we move the bishop, while black has to move the knight, move the bishop, and then castle. Therefore, we already rule out from the start that taking that pawn is a good move, right? Let's say taking that knight. When we play here, taking this knight seems like a bad idea, right? Because after pawn takes pawn, we would be left in a much better position. So what is the idea that undoubtedly seems much better? Well, there's no doubt at all that it's knight takes pawn. Notice one thing. With this knight, we are defending the pawn attacked by the knight, right? By moving the knight, we are giving away this pawn. And you'll tell me, chess teacher, it's not the first pawn you've given away, huh? You give away the first one, and now you give away the second one. What's happening to you? Are you called crazy? Well, if you're subscribers to the channel, it goes without saying that yes. After giving away 2 pawns, we're going to play bishop c4. A very, very interesting move. It's true, we're taking advantage of the fact that our opponent has 2 extra pawns to gain the initiative. What is the idea behind bishop c4? Look, what we want to play now is, besides attacking this point with great force, notice that at some point we could jump in with the knight, we could come in with the queen, okay? Now, what we're threatening is this right here, queen e2, and it seems like a brutal threat. Why? Because this knight would be brutally pinned and wouldn't be able to move. This knight is the one that prevents us from coming in, for example, with the knight through here, right? So now, queen e2 is a brutal threat. But of course, many will realize, and let's see, this knight here is fine. Actually, it's not very well placed because it's undefended, but it has several squares to take cover, right? With this square seam girdle, well, it would seem like a somewhat weak square because we'd come in with the bishop here, putting on brutal pressure. I think he'd get into more trouble here than he's already in, and on top of that, we could also come here later. It seems the best option is to play knight to c5. Look at these 2 beautiful knights here. I don't know if you can see them well. All right, what do we have to do when they move the knight away? It really doesn't matter much to us where they move it, right? If they move it here, well, we'll just move the bishop away. We don't really care much. The only thing is that here, all they're doing is blocking themselves even more without developing their pieces, right? That's why c5 seems like a much better option. And at some point, if we play queen to e2, they can always go back to e6, and it seems they're much safer here with 2 extra pawns. Let's not forget that, okay? Well then, what should we do when they play this knight to c5? Well, our plan is the same. That's why I always tell you, it's much more important to remember the plan than the exact moves, because otherwise, your opponent will play a weird move and you won't remember the plan. The plan is to place the bishop here, attacking the queen, and there are several options here. Mainly, there are 2 primary options. The first one, you need to know how to react if they play f6. And here, white, sorry, black has already lost. Now I'll show you how to punish it, because it's very, very simple. Notice that the king has opened up a diagonal that's way too dangerous, right? So we should simply take advantage of it with the queen. So we let the queen through by moving the knight. Look at that, see? We just have to remember the concepts. Do I want to enter with the queen because it's weakened? Well, I move the knight, which is the piece in my way, and that's it. No matter how much they take the bishop, we don't care because the plan is the same. We come in to give check with the queen. Notice how we enter and the king can't move and there's no piece that can block. They can only come here after knight takes. Notice that when they take the knight, we don't even want to take the rook, because taking this pawn would already be a real checkmate since the king can't go anywhere. This square is protected by the knight. But you'll tell me, yeah, great, chess teacher, all this if he plays f6. But what happens if he doesn't play f6? Well, pay attention, because the move makes even more sense if they don't play f6, which is actually what happened in the game. Look, it was like this, right? I'm not missing anything, am I? Now it's perfect. When we make this move here, attacking the queen, in the game, knight to e7 was played, a move that makes even more sense. You mustn't forget one thing. Our opponent is up 2 pawns. That means we shouldn't stop attacking. If we get careless and our opponent manages to defend well, he'll simply have won the game, because he'll be up 2 pawns and reach a winning endgame. So what we have to do is take advantage of that attacking edge I'm telling you about, because if you use it, you'll win many games. Now, punishing this knight to e7 is a simple task. You just have to know how to do it. First of all, what we'll do is jump in with the other knight and look at these 2 knights here in the center of the board. Accompanied by our 2 bishops, we're going to launch a brutal attack. Do you notice the pawns were down now? Well, no! The ones who feel the squeeze are them, just the black pieces. Because we have 4 pieces. All 4 minor pieces launched into the attack, and this is already too easy to determine. Whatever they do, we'll have plenty of combinations that you'll have to think about, of course, in your games. However, I'll show them to you in case you don't want to think, because they're very simple if you know them. Notice that here, the best move in the position is knight e6. Why? Because it blocks the diagonal of this powerful bishop, right? Which joins with the knight, plus it defends the pawn on d4, right? And it also attacks this bishop that's undefended. So, how should we continue? Well, we must continue putting more pressure on the 5-7. This time we enter with the queen. Queen f3. Look at that brutal pressure with the knight, with the queen, and maybe with the bishop. However, here it seems we blundered a super strong move. Knight takes bishop seems to defend everything. It defends this square, attacks the queen, and on top of that wins a bishop. Now we're down a bishop and 2 pawns. Well, I don't think you'll expect the move that's coming now, because with so much material down, I'm sure many of you are thinking knight takes pawn, but it doesn't work, because after queen takes knight, then no matter how much we enter here, the king escapes, and we're down too much material. We'd be down 2 pieces and a pawn, okay? And at this moment, being down so much material, notice that the move is to sacrifice the queen. Incredible, right? Does it give you goosebumps or what? We sacrifice the queen, check. They can't take because of the knight. They must capture with the knight, and then we simply jump with this knight to give check to clear the way for the bishop and the knight. Check, he can't move, he has to capture, and now, ladies and gentlemen, checkmate with this bishop. Well, if this thing's spectacular to you, it was only the warm-up. Now comes the best part of the video. At the beginning of the video, I explained that when playing d4, which is the Belgrade gambit, they had to take no matter what, okay? And then, what should we play? Remember well, okay? The good thing about these videos is that you think while I'm explaining it, okay? Even if you watch the video a second or third time, you study it. So let's see if you remember from the first time. This is super important, okay? I explained that capturing this pawn had drastic consequences because it freed us up too much to attack with the 2 knights and the 2 bishops. However, you told me, chess teacher, that taking here was also a very bad option because after the pawn recapture, this knight had to move away, you remember, right? No matter how much it moves here attacking the pawn, we recaptured with the queen and we're left with a much better position. The 2 free bishops, a queen that's hard to attack. Yes, all this is very well, chess teacher, it's true. I also see that I'm better here. But let's see, I don't have the attack from before anymore, and as much as I'm better, I don't know how to punish it. Well, pay attention, because you'll want them to play this against you. And watch out, they play it a lot. They don't just play knight takes pawn, but many people play knight takes knight, okay? You must know how to punish it. You'll wish they play this against you, because it gives you a free hand. It's just too easy to win the game. And you'll start by simply applying this theory. Look, first, no matter what they do right, notice that the most common move is d6. They have to develop their pieces and, for example, this bishop can't come out because if they advance this pawn, we take the rook, right? The most common is d6. Without a doubt, huh? You'll see it's the most natural move. I'm sure you were thinking of it too. Very well, they must develop some piece since they only have the knight. Now, after d6, we simply play bishop d3. Our T move, right? Why bishop d3? Because we want a castle, and on this diagonal, we're very well placed, aiming at the king side, right? That's it. But anyway, this isn't the important part. What's important is what comes next. To develop this bishop, notice they can't come here because we'd capture it with the queen. They can't come here because we capture it with the bishop. They can't come here because we'd capture it with the pawn, and here it would be very sad. The most used move here, which I've looked up, is coming with the knight here attacking the queen, trying to get us to capture this knight so they develop the bishop. That's what they want, and in fact, we're gonna do it. There's no problem at all. We exchange this bishop for this knight, we're not worried. If they don't do it, absolutely nothing happens. Our idea is exactly the same, okay? What is our idea? Well, what we want is the castle, whether they make the exchanges or not, right? Pay attention to the idea we have. Here, the black pieces can almost resign already. And you'll tell me, chess teacher, how can that be? If we're not doing that badly, right? With the black pieces, we have the same material. Black even has the bishop pair, yes. But our position is so extremely good and so restrictive that they can't do absolutely anything. Let me tell you, this queen is powerfully placed, aiming at this point. So they can never develop this bishop and they can never castle. They can't develop this bishop through here because we capture here. They can't develop it through here because we capture the rook. So we're threatening rook e1 check. They can't block because we capture here. They can't block because this pawn is super well placed. So now, if you look at the position again, I haven't changed anything. I'm sure that now after this little 10-second explanation, you see the position very differently. And you come to the conclusion that it's true. Here the black pieces can't do absolutely anything. And so they even prefer to play bishop e7, sacrificing a pawn, and they say, well, whatever, take a pawn, but at least I develop, right? And it's fine, because here, no matter how much you attack my rook, I come here with the bishop. Well, obviously, as much as they might have thought they're safe here and just give up a pawn, many might think, well, now what I do is come here, I castle long, and all I have is a pawn down, but I have the bishop pair. No, 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 here they can already resign. They can't do absolutely anything. No matter how much they think this move saves them, it does absolutely nothing. Why? Because we have a pretty strong move, which is rook e1. Notice the strength of thinking about the plan and not just memorize moves. Rook e1 is what makes us win the game. You could see it coming that something didn't smell right. They weren't defending as well as they could. I won't even explain why he wins the game. If bishop e6, do we capture or not? Well, in that case, we'd already have a bit of, how do you say it, of trouble. We'll say it now. Why? Because we couldn't capture as he'd take our queen. But anyway, let's look at that move because we're totally winning regardless, okay? The important thing here is, what's the most logical move for black once we play rook e1 check? Well, you'll surely tell me the most logical is to escape with the king since everything is defended that way. This bishop is defended by the queen, this rook by the queen, but of course they stop defending this pawn where we'd enter with check, and this really starts to be quite terrible for the black pieces. No matter how much they try to escape, we'd even have this very strong move here that pins this bishop. You see it, right? It pins this bishop. Even if they capture here, we don't even care because we capture this with check, and now we'd even win another piece because we're attacking it with knight and queen. Check, they have to deal with the threat, and then we'd capture here. Look at the strength, right, of this open file with the rook, and that black is way too restricted. And what I just mentioned, that when we gave this check, remember what I said, right? That if they moved the king, we'd take here. But I mentioned we'd see what happened if they blocked with the bishop. We can't take this bishop because they take our queen. Well, this is very simple. Very, very simple. Sometimes you overthink things and don't evaluate the position from the outside. From the outside, what is the position? We have the same material, two pieces against two pieces, and we're even on pawns. We even have an extra pawn, right? Which is this one here. So if we have an extra pawn, we just move the queen away. Even here where it can't be taken. And look at this. They're going to lose the bishop too, you see? It's pinned. It can't move. So now, whatever they do, on the next move, we are going to take this bishop, and we'd be left with a position with a pawn and a piece up. And not only that, but the king would be super, super exposed here. We'd give checkmate in a few moves thanks to the rook and the queen. The importance is sometimes thinking about our standing in the game. Look, I don't have checkmate. No big deal. We're winning. We just move the queen away and take this bishop. All right, this is going to become your favorite line of the Belgrade Gambit, okay? Why? Because it's the most played line of all. So I'm going to show you how to punish it severely. The most interesting and only move that works for black is to take this pawn, okay? So what are we going to do? Knight to d5. This is mandatory. So between the two options, which is better? Without a doubt, taking this pawn, okay? A much better option. We saw that before we had a winning position, but due to the opponent's mistakes. Here, I'm going to show you a very strong line with bishop d3. It's a very strong line because, look, these two moves are what 90% of people do. Why? Because this pawn must be taken, and then we give away another pawn. They take the other pawn too, and they're two pawns up, right? So here, sorry, I can't breathe there. This is where most Belgrade Gambit games end up. And then we're going to play bishop to d3. What does bishop to d3 do? Makes it another forced move. Because here, without a doubt, the most logical move is to retreat the knight to f6. We're attacking this knight, trying to get the queen at e2, so coming here would result in the same thing. It would be exactly the same, but even worse for black, because they're blocking his bishop. It seems much better to go with knight to f6, trying to trade this knight, which, look, is a real headache. And it's true, it's a good move, because we want to keep this knight. And how should we do that? Well, it's very simple. Here, if you trade directly, black has achieved what they wanted. But we always have the intermediate move, queen to e2, giving a brutal check to the king, and now they must block. Notice that they can't block with the queen, because it would be a disaster. We take with the knight and they'd lose the queen, so they have to block with a minor piece. And once they block, notice that now we can indeed capture this knight. If they block with the knight instead of the bishop, it's the same. We capture here, okay? The idea is that after capturing here, they can't recapture with the bishop because it's pinned by the queen, so they have to recapture this way. And notice that we've achieved something super important. They can't no longer castle short, because if they do, look, we could bring the queen to e4 to threaten a checkmate that's too strong and practically impossible to stop. You'll have to explain to me how you stop this kind of checkmate. So black has to up for trying to perform a long castle, right? Without a doubt, because the king in the center is doing terribly, and here it's even worse, so they have to try to castle long. And notice that we've reached this point very easily. All we've done is kick the knight and place the queen on e2. All of this is practically forced. So now, how does the game continue? Well, very simply, once they recapture here, what are we going to do? A very logical move, we're going to castle, right? No, it seems, chess teacher, that you're wasting time. How can you castle now if we're down 2 pawns? Don't worry, we have the king safe, we have plenty of time, because now we bring another piece into the attack, the rook to d1, right? So how can the black pieces continue their development? The most logical move would be to move the pawn to develop this bishop, right? Hyperlogical move, right? They must move this pawn because they must move this bishop. And if I tell you now, after rook to d1, look at that strong pressure on the king. What development move would be best to defend against all this attack from the white pieces? I'm sure you tell me the best is bishop to e6, and it seems like the best, yes, but, well, we have an attack plan that's too strong. Whatever they do, we're just gonna keep pressing. Now, we're gonna place this bishop, even though we've already moved it once, we're gonna move it again to put a lot of pressure on this knight. And now we're threatening a threat that's too strong, that the opponent can't stop. We're threatening bishop takes knight and doubling pawns. If we achieve that, for example, if they kick us here, look, we'd be opening up the king side, the center, and the queen side. The king would never be safe. That's why they can't do absolutely anything. If they try to get out of the pin, well, rather, not the pin, but placing the queen to recapture with the queen, notice that this pawn is hanging, and we could go in with knight takes d4, putting on a lot of pressure. It's true that right now nothing's happening. They don't have to capture. And if they do, they can capture with a pawn. Absolutely nothing happens. However, the force is already too great. We're threatening here. We're threatening here. Our opponent, no matter what they do, is going to end up losing. For example, we don't care at all. We want to take this knight no matter what they do. If they castle long, just to say something, exactly the same if they kick the bishop, whatever they do. Whatever they do, we're going to capture this knight. With the knight? Row! With the bishop. Why? Because if we capture with the knight, they would attack our bishop. And what we want is to play our turn again without anything being attacked. Notice they've opened this line. We go in with the queen. Check. And not only that, but the only move is they have to move the king here. We jump in with the knight defended by the queen. Check. They're gonna have to move, forced move here, and now we simply go in with checkmate. This is just a consequence of us attacking nonstop and not letting our opponent breathe. The king ended up in mate here, but it could just as easily have ended with mate in the center or with mate here. That's the good thing about this Belgrade gambit. We leave the king with no options to defend himself. That's why it's so powerful. Watch your out. You must know this. It's very simple, however. If they do it to you and you haven't learned it, you're gonna suffer. All right? Now, after this Belgrade gambit move, we're talking about this in the video, in case there's anyone clueless who doesn't get what's going on, huh? We're talking the whole video about this gambit. What happens, chess teacher? If here, instead of playing one of the two options you told me, what were the two options you told me? Capture this pawn or capture this knight? I run into a coward who, sorry for the word, doesn't want to take here or take here, but plays bishop e7. It's fine. Nothing's happening here. I have an extra pawn. I'll stay sheltered here. I want to castle fast before you attack me. You scare me. Relax. I'm going to show you how to destroy this opponent because it's very simple. And you only have to remember the following. First, we'll start with bishop c4. You should know that, for example, this pawn, whenever you want, you can win it back. If you're scared, oh, I'm a pawn down, oh, I'm a pawn down, well, relax. Knight takes pawn. Notice we also have the queen. Whenever you want, you can win back this pawn. Don't worry about them taking this pawn here. We don't care too much, all right? For example, after bishop c4, what move could they make? Well, the most logical thing is if they've done this is to castle fast and not have problems, right? Well, it's fine. They castle, we do too. But not because they castled, but because our plan is this. Castle to place the rook on e1. You remember, right? If they take this pawn, it doesn't matter. Are you 2 pawns down? Yes, but we already know how to live with being 2 pawns down because we know how to attack. If they don't capture that pawn, even better. We have a very similar attack, and besides, we have more material, right? Rook 1, no grabov. It's true that to avoid losing time here, they might come here trying to gain a tempo by kicking out our bishop. What should you do? Come here? Come here? No, I recommend bishop f4. Here, we're hanging this bishop, and we don't care if they capture or not. Why? Because if they fall for the trap, perfect. Well, it's not a trap, but we'd simply be much better off if they capture, right? But if they didn't capture, it's fine, because bishop f4 is a perfectly valid move. We have this super strong knight attack in here along with the bishop. We can win back this pawn. We have a great position. Whether they take it or not, but chess teacher, what happens if they take? Because most people will see that if they come here, it's to kick this bishop. We play bishop f4. Why are you hanging this bishop? Don't give me that. Well, this is very simple because we're coming in with too much force through here. And you'll tell me, look, chess teacher, they've taken 2 pawns and a bishop. Did you do all this to take 1 measly pawn? It's not a measly pawn. Look, they have to move the queen because it's protected by the knight. And when they move the queen, now we come in with the other knight. That's another plot. Doubt it? And why is this move so very strong? Because now we're threatening this bishop with the knight and the rook. And besides the queen, it's only defended by this knight. This knight that we're now putting brutal pressure on with knight takes d4. So this knight can't do anything anymore to keep defending this bishop right here. If they take here, simply, look, I'll show you. Rook takes bishop and we win the queen. This queen has nowhere to go. That's why you can't capture this knight, right? So what other options would they have? Well, simply if they try to play, for example, d6 to try to escape, this is very, very simple. You should continue by capturing this knight since it's the piece that's bothering us. And now they have 2 options, right? Capture with the pawn, capture with the queen, both a disaster. If they capture with the queen, knight takes bishop, check, and we take the queen, right? And they're completely lost because on top of that, they lose the queen. But what happens if they take with the pawn? Well, exactly the same thing happens. We take with the rook, and they lose the queen again. That's why, if they try to play like cowards and not enter our gambit game, a big lesson awaits them too. So, I hope you loved this video. If so, leave me a like and I'll see you in the next one, friends. Bye.